We're going to have about 30 minutes with Senator Newman, so please keep questions brief and to the point. That said, however, this will be an open forum, so please raise your hand if you have a question or comment, and you can put it into the chat, and I will try to read those off as soon as it's possible. So first, a little bit about Cora. Cora was raised here in Bozeman by her mom, a homemaker, and her stepfather, a union carpenter. Cora worked as a waitress, nanny, and construction worker to help finance an impressive educational background, including a bachelor's from the University of New Mexico, a master's in public health from Columbia, and Dr. Newman received her PhD in international development from the University of Oxford. Over the past 25 years, Cora has founded and led multiple nonprofit organizations that help create jobs, increase access to rural healthcare, boost maternal and child healthcare, and protect our public lands. Cora has done this work in Montana and across the country and world, working with local leaders, Republicans and Democrats alike, at the U.S. State Department and at the Montana Public Health Institute and the World Health Organization to solve problems that families and workers are facing. Cora currently serves as a Chief Community Health Officer for a Native-led organization helping ensure Montanans across the state have access to the healthcare they need. She and her husband are raising 2 teenage children here in Senate District 30, surrounded by 4 generations of family. Welcome, Senator Newman.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you for hosting this.
Absolutely.
We go into quite a vortex up in Helena, so I try to. It's very helpful when opportunities are made available for us to check in with you, because it feels like we want to stay as connected as we can, but it is very hard. Everybody warned me, but I really understand it now. So I'm happy to have this opportunity.
That's great. And I think as a citizen, not in the legislature, it's it's a full-time job to keep up with what's going on there. So having these briefings are really helpful. So thanks for taking time out of what I imagine is a very Herculean schedule to meet with your constituents. First off, can you tell us what committees you were on?
Yes. Yep. So I'm on the Judiciary Committee, and about 40% of all the bills in the Senate go through the Judiciary Committee, so it's a tough one. I'm not a lawyer. I'm, a public health worker, so I'm learning a ton. The other 2 Democrats in there are much more versed and have a background in law. So, but I'm on the Judiciary Committee. I'm on the Health Committee, so public health. And then I'm on the Agriculture Committee. So it's agriculture, livestock, and irrigation is that one. And so they're all the Judiciary and Health Committees are very, very busy. And agriculture is less busy, but it's a topic I care a lot about. I actually have 4 bills on agriculture out of my bills this session. So that one's been great. And then I'm on call on the Rules Committee.
And what does that entail, being on call for the Rules Committee?
Whenever they need to convene to discuss the rules, Senate rules, it's announced and on call. So it's not the other, like my Judiciary Committee is every single day at 8 a.m. My Health Committee is every other day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 days a week at 3 p.m. And then the Ag is Tuesday, Thursday. So it's kind of, they each have a different cadence, and then rules is as needed.
Let's see. So after transmittal, how does that change the calculus of the remainder of the session? And kind of like as a related question, what do you foresee as like the most important legislation happening over the next few weeks, and that interplay? Can you kind of talk us through that?
I mean, so again, and remember, this is my first session, so I'm learning along with anybody else who's either in for the first time or tracking for the first time. But the after transmittal, so transmittal is when the bills all changed chambers. The difference for me as in the Senate as a senator is that in general we have an overview of all the bills, right? So no more new bills are going to be introduced. So it is. Whereas before transmittal, you were obviously constantly trying to track what was coming, and not knowing, like, not only, what was going to be introduced. I mean, you can always look it up, but you don't know if somebody's actually going to pick it up and introduce it or not. So there's a lot of guessing in the pre-transmittal time. And then also, like, if something's died, then it's out of play. Now we know every bill that's in play. And it's moving pretty quickly. I had, the bills that I had pass or were already heard immediately post transmittal. I had two immediately heard. I have two, and you know, some more this week. And so they're definitely moving everything through pretty quickly because there are a lot of bills. And in terms of bills to pay attention to, it depends on, you know, your area of focus, right? And so I think I sent you all links when I sent a set like pre-transmittal overview of a lot of the things that we accomplished during the first half, and there were some sign up links there. And so if it's social issues, I recommend for sure Catalyst, Forward Montana. I think Planned Parenthood does, you know, obviously on reproductive rights issues. And Catalyst does social issues, so they do, you know, overlap of, you know, civil rights, human rights, housing, LGBTQ issues. And I find that, you know, because as you all know, as you're trying to track as well, no one organization can track everything. And then there's also MCV and Montana Environmental Information Center, so MEIC. Big Sky 55 Plus, which is, you know, issues related to just anyone 55 and older, issues impacting older Montanans. And so those are, I'm sure I'm missing some, so my apologies to any groups that I'm forgetting, but those are a lot of the issues that I focus on. And then of course we have the Montana American Indian Caucus, so Western Native Voice, and Red Medicine LLC, which is a lobby group. Those are the ones that are, you know, doing action alerts for those different issues. So, you know, there are a lot of the areas that I generally focused on that I think are going to impact our democracy are attacks on the judiciary. So trying to make our elections for judges partisan. And also that's the kind of biggest one that you'll probably hear about because it's kind of a headline one. But there are also multiple bills that are looking at finding ways to break down the independence of the judiciary. Right, so making judges more susceptible to impeachment, taking away their power, you know, limiting where somebody can try a case. I mean, just there were 27 bills that came out of the Senate interim committee. I mean, the interim committee on judicial reform. It shouldn't be reform. It should have been the interim committee on dismantling the judiciary. That's the accurate name for it. And so some of the things I've been, you know, it's like, what do we need to focus on at the state level? And then what do we need to focus on at the state level in the context of a rise in fascism under Trump, right? So I'm trying to think about both at the same time, which is hard to do from the you know, Helena, because it's so busy. But the attacks on the judiciary, you know, the three main guards against fascism. There are four really, but I'm not even going to say Congress because Congress is not acting right now. So Congress would be one, if you think about the four things that keep us from really sliding into fascism. So there's Congress. They do have a lot of power. They're not using it. He can't just dismantle things, but they're not stopping him. Second is military. And as long as they're actually sworn to the Constitution and not the president, even though he's commander in chief, when they see something unconstitutional, they can still say no. That hasn't been challenged yet, but I'm sure it's coming. The judiciary, right? So we have the Supreme Court's even standing up now. But 30% of the federal circuit courts, federal judges have been appointed by Trump. So we still have 70% that have not been. And impeaching a judge is a pretty big effort. And I'm trying to learn more about that. Maybe somebody on this call knows what it takes to impeach a judge. But so you have Congress, military, judiciary, and then you have state powers, right? So what we're dealing with here is the state power that we have, right? And I do think it's interesting for me personally, having worked nationally and internationally and run for a national seat, being in the state house actually feels like a really important place to be right now, you know, because this is where I think there are a lot of decisions we're going to have to make as the federal government, especially if they become kind of paralyzed, right? You know, responsibility on the states is going to increase. And we also have the ability to, you know, maintain democracy at a local level. And that's really, really important. So the attacks on the judiciary fall within that bigger context, because I think, you know, dismantling the judiciary in Montana is like a microcosm of the fascism that's happening on the state, on the national level. And we have to make sure to fight hard against that. We passed Medicaid expansion, which is phenomenal. And the governor did want that to pass. So that was a great, kind of alliance that came together between the moderates, the Democrats, and the moderate Republicans, the Democrats, and the governor. So what we see now is, how can we make sure that it stays intact and there aren't continued attacks on what's included under Medicaid expansion? And then obviously we have to think about what happens if the federal Medicaid changes, right? And that's not going to happen overnight, but we still need to prepare for that. So I'm trying to meet with my colleagues and think about how we prepare for that. Because abortion was codified in our Constitution, which is really phenomenal. And I hope everybody who made that happen feels very proud of themselves every single day, because it's a really big deal. Because basically that was a Republican part of the agenda on the Republican side for the most part was, to make abortion illegal, right, and inaccessible. They have had some abortion bills. We have killed most of them, which is great. But they haven't had as many because of CI 128. So that really did change the dynamic. What happened though was they shifted this is my interpretation, is they shifted from attacking abortion access to attacking LGBTQ and specifically the trans community. So I've been really, that's been a big part of my work up there, has been trying to stop those, how work together with my colleagues and anyone who will join us to stop those anti-trans bills. It is state sanctioned persecution. It is absolutely, I don't even understand it's not legal to target a group like that. It's not. So, trying to there have been 25 anti-LGBTQ bills that are in play. There were like over 100 that were drafted, right? And so on that front, we do need to continue to pay attention. So I would say definitely sign up to Forward Montana and Catalyst Montana for updates on those bills, because as much as we want to be able to, and then the legislative update that I know you all set up, Zach and Joe, I think, which is awesome, but not easy. So you should, I'm sure you're signed up for all the other updates too, so you can kind of translate them over. But I can't even, none of us individually can keep track of everything that's happening. And I remember seeing my call, before I was in the state house, actually talking to my friends who were legislators, and I'm like, well, that bill and they were like, no, I don't. And I'm like, how do you not know? And now I understand that you can't, right?
It's crazy.
And then there's the conservation ones, right? So it just depends on your issue. But I think that the ones that are most dangerous for the people of Montana, from my perspective, are the attacks on the judiciary, because that takes away our ability to fight these terrible bills in court, the attacks on the LGBTQ community, and then the attacks on public lands and conservation. Those seem to be the places, and education. So on public education, there are continued attempts to privatize education and to take resources away from our teachers in schools. The STARS Act, I know, is a really good one. I don't know all the details, but I would just say, look into the STARS Act as one to support for education. But yeah, that's, I know, a little bit more maybe long-winded than you wanted, but that's my perspective as we head into the second half.
So that was great. I have 100 questions, of course, now with all of that. But so as not to monopolize this, is there anyone else who is attending who would like to ask about any questions about any of that? Okay, feel free to interject anytime. Julia.
Well, this is just curiosity. I saw that our Gallatin Republicans censored Shelley Vance. And what do you think is the effect on those 9 Republicans in the Senate? I mean, just because you're getting to actually know them, So I guess I would love to hear your inside view on that. Like, are they is Shelley Vance frightened?
No,
Oh,
I mean, I'm not gonna speak on her behalf, but I think that, yeah, I work fairly closely with a lot of the nine. I have some great relationships with them. Um, and, you know, the Freedom Caucus, which is
right.
the far right, is going to continue to do everything they can to destroy the careers of the nine. My response to that, you know, and I think their own response to that, you know, again, I won't speak for them, but, you know, we're all adults and we're all elected. We get to make our own choices, right? We get to vote on behalf of our constituents. And the pressure to vote differently, assuming is an assumption on the Freedom Caucus's side that these individuals aren't voting for their constituents, right? And so it's just really not right. Um, and I think that the continued attacks on the nine, in my opinion, from my observations, just makes them stronger because it makes their conviction stronger because they know why they're voting the way they're voting. They are voting for their constituents. They're being called, you know, disloyal and, you know, like they're just working with the Democrats. They're not actually. There's a lot of stuff they are not voting with us on, but they are voting down the really extreme, a lot of the really extreme stuff, unfortunately not on the social issues, which, you know, that's a whole different conversation and we can have that too. But no, I think that, you know, trying to be the bullying and intimidation and threats that I have seen are, again, not ethical. Like these individuals get to vote on behalf, they're supposed to vote on behalf of their constituents, and that's what they're doing. And so I don't think none of them have backed down. I think that I've just been incredibly impressed by their courage. Really, 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 really impressed, especially again in the context of what's happening at the federal level where you don't see a single Republican standing up. Like we have nine that are standing up, right? It's really, I just say you guys are the most Montana and Montanans in here. I mean, you're the real Montana here. Being reasonable and voting together and standing up for reason and practical solutions and, you know, so yeah, I mean, you know, I think that Shelley Vance has been here for decades. She and her husband and her family have committed so much to this county. You know, a bunch of angry, you know, people who I don't know what the people who are censuring her, what they've done for this county. Doesn't seem like a lot as far as I'm concerned. And so who are they representing? Are they representing national Republicans? Are they representing other groups? Because it does not seem that they are representing Gallatin County. So.
All right, I saw Elizabeth's hand and then Damien. For that.
Okay. So Cora, I think one of your bills, I believe it was 394, will go to the House now. And
Yes.
so what I've been doing, and I assume that this is still a good idea, if any of the nine are in a committee, then I contact them. But then once it goes to this floor, then I contact. It's actually more than nine, you know.
Yeah, all the Republicans.
Yeah, well, yeah, but as I kind of track various, like some of the very important bills, it seems like all the nine aren't voting for or against it, you know, with the Democrats, but often it seems like it's a group of 12 or 13 that sometimes break.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we should continue doing that.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
It really is fantastic to have you reach out and so 394, so everybody knows, is allowing PTSD to be covered by workers' comp for first responders. It's a tiny investment relative to the workers' comp claims in the state. And it was interesting when I was presenting the bill, the opponents did not seem to have a lot of conviction in there. They were definitely fighting back, and I'm sure they're fighting back a lot behind closed doors. But I was like, are you really going to stand up? You know, looking at like the $16 million budget or more, and really be upset about like a couple $100,000 for first responders. Like, So anyways, yeah, I think that it does still have to have third reading. And so
Right.
that'll be maybe Monday, maybe tomorrow, and then it goes to the House. So yes, please do. And have, any of the first responders in your life reach out to the, that are not lobbyists, right? They're not, because those groups are represented, and it's really awesome to have them up there, and they will come again for the House side hearing. But also just having, the average citizen who is impacted by this to reach out, that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. One very quick question. Okay. Medicaid, or the bill that made it all the way through.
Yep.
Some people are concerned that Gianforte won't sign it. I know he's been very supportive, but on the other hand, because of the
He's gonna sign it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So not to worry, it sounds like.
Don't worry. I know,
Thank
it's like they're putting together, it's gonna be like a big ceremony, I think. I mean, obviously it's not over till it's over, so.
Okay.
Who knows,
Thank
but
you.
yeah, no, there's no, in Helena, there's no concern, and in his office, there's no waffling.
Okay. Thank you.
Damien, do you still wish to proffer your question? You're on mute.
Yes, thank you. So I guess my question is related to being on the Agriculture Committee and seeing kind of what's going on at the federal level with the cancellation of so many of the work that USAID does. And is that having an effect on Montana farmers yet? And is there any discussion, concerns about that that's happening in your committees?
Yeah, so, yes, we aren't talking, like, we talk about it, we talk about it some. We haven't had a deeper discussion about it, which I do want to do, and I've told the chair that I'd like to do that, but the tariffs are definitely impacting farmers and ranchers, right? And so is USDA, slashing its budgets is definitely impacting Montana farmers and ranchers. And so, I know that there are quite a few colleagues of mine in the legislature who are farmers and ranchers, and quite a few of the 9 actually are. And we've heard stories of people's prices already, dropping like 15%. And so I'm glad you asked that question, because that's the other area where I feel like for Montana specifically, but for sure for our country. I mean, with all of my bills, I talk about food security, really, because we need to start thinking about that. Only, I think 10%. I think 10%, or maybe it's even less than 10%. I should know this, but I have so many stats in my head of, the food produced in Montana is eaten in Montana by Montanans. Whatever we can do, and my bills all address bringing, keeping our food here, and, strengthening our local producers, giving them preference, and, supporting their operations, because that's another way to safeguard against the impact of tariffs, right? And so that's a really good question, because that is something that I want to start getting us thinking about. We're thinking about Medicaid, and what about, like there's the food security and food supply, and then there's the other thing for Montana, obviously, is our national parks, right, and tourism. So those industries are health, ag, and tourism are massive. Those are our biggest industries. So we try to prepare.
And to that end, so I'm assuming you're hinting a little bit at Senate Bill 371 for Montana produced goods. Is that fair to say that relates to?
So the tax incentives?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's up on Tuesday. So there was a version of that failed in the House. It is expensive, so it's going to be the hardest one to, get through, but it gives incentives to, stores for selling. It's tax incentives for stores to sell Montana made products. So it's basically, it's an incentive program. Which I would love to see. It's going to be hard, that one, because of the price tag, but that one comes up on Tuesday, and I'm definitely looking forward to trying to move it.
I was going through just a quick, bills that you were sponsoring, co-sponsoring for this, and that one piqued my interest. Is super interesting, and knowing, you describing it in the context of food security in light of what is happening with tariffs and USAID. That's
USDA, yep.
very,
Are
very
you talking about
interesting.
USAID or USDA, Damien?
I said USAID, just thinking about like the agricultural products that we ship
That's
overseas.
right.
But I should have
Both.
also included tariffs and work the USDA
USDA.
does.
Yeah, you're right. They'll all impact Montana. Yep.
And
So go ahead, Damien.
I was just gonna say, like, you were saying that for sure the tariffs are affecting it and the USDA stuff. Is it like really being felt yet, or is it just like worries about what the next year is going to be like, and like the next time the legislator meets, is that the point at which a lot of these farmers will really start to feel some of the pains
I think
that?
some of their prices are already dropped.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think they're starting to feel it already, which is what we need. It's our job, all of our job and for sure our job in the legislature, but to track that and to get that feedback. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Damien. So I'm very curious about what you started out talking about, the attacks on the judiciary at the national level. And also, I mean, and at the state level, all of these bills so could you talk a little bit about what has made it through transmittal with respect to the judiciary, whether or not your argument that this is a line of defense against what is, breaking down at the national level, like, is that argument sitting with your Republican colleagues that this might not be the best time to be doing this because we've lost our other checks and balances right now?
I mean, the people who are the Freedom Caucus doesn't want it, doesn't want an independent judiciary, right? So they're happy for Trump to do it and they're happy to do it themselves. But we have gotten through and been able to kill some of the bad judicial bills with the moderate Republicans. And so I do think that that's breaking through. And I think that it's every day's a new day, given what's happening on the national level, right? And so as news breaks and as we see, it's fuzzy whether or not the orders were defied. I mean, the way that people are perceiving and interpreting it, with the most recent or the first real defying of a court order, of a judge's orders. But I think these are the kinds of things where you're like, I wish we had time to also talk about this. Like, it's something you do, or you're supposed to discuss it on the floor, right? And so you bring it up and ask those questions. Unfortunately, the people who are introducing these bills are they're in line with not having
More
a
assimilation.
judiciary. Yeah, unfortunately. And the bills that have gotten through, I don't have the list in front of me. Again, it's moving really quickly. Okay, I remember. Friends of the Third Branch. That is the group to follow for judicial bills. And so I recommend looking at that, seeing, I don't know if they have alerts, but they've been really great about getting us information as legislators on the impact so we can speak to them and, understand them as a whole. So we just killed another one in committee on Friday, which was very exciting. A bipartisan group killed another bad one.
Good.
The Chancery Court, the one where there'd be a separate court just for Supreme Court cases, is another way to try to control and stop the Supreme Court from ruling a bill unconstitutional. So that was exciting. That was a good.
Can you explain the concept behind that a little bit more? Like, what is this? It's called a Chancery Court?
Well, it was called a Chancery Court, and then they changed the name of it. And I don't know what the new name was, but it was basically a special court for Supreme Court cases. And
Court for court? A court for court? So what would it do?
It would give more oversight and have the judges in this new court would be, I have to look at it. Actually, I don't want to get it wrong because it changed a couple times, right? They go into committees, they get amendments, etc. So I don't know what the current state of it is, but it's a way of having a special court where there's more oversight by the executive branch over the court. right? So I don't know if the judges were gonna be appointed, so I'll look at that one, but that's one that that was killed. And hopefully it won't come back in another way, but that was one of the pathways that they were looking at taking control of the courts and the Supreme Court specifically.
That sounds just terrible, like just
Yeah.
terrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
John in the chat asks about, can you speak to housing related legislation that's made it past transmittal, particularly regarding affordable rentals, homeownership, homelessness, which do you support?
I mean, I support all of the good housing bills that have come out. We have, I would actually say if you all can get Kelly Cordum, Representative Cordum, I would just suggest doing one of these sessions with him because he's deeply versed in the housing legislation. Senator Fern, from Whitefish, he got a $50 million fund, passed through through the Senate, and we don't know where it'll end, what they'll do with it in the House. But that was a big, it's not enough, right? 50 million is not enough. But there's some housing trust and or housing fund, and then some property tax relief, again, not enough. But that's probably, I don't have as much time, or that doesn't come in front of me as much, so I can't speak to that as in-depth as the others. But Kelly Cordum, Representative Cordum, would be a great person to have on just to go do a deeper dive into that.
Yep. Despite saying what you just said, I'm gonna ask a follow-up question about that. Do you
Sure.
know, there was property tax relief for, there were several different forms, but did renters make it into a bill? So some sort of, property tax relief for renters?
I don't
Did that-
know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Right.
Yeah,
Fair.
I wish I could remember, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. Still, I could ask a lot of questions. We're about at the time. And so I guess, are there any last second questions or anything that you want to say, Cora, to the group in closing?
There aren't any more questions. I think just thank you all for as much as you can pay attention, please do. And sign up those alerts and read them and pick something, nobody can do it all. So don't let yourself get overwhelmed. Choose a topic that you care about and focus on that topic. And then maybe you have a friend who likes it, who really cares about another topic, and they can tell you when it's, they need something's really bad and they need you to mobilize or help them mobilize. But I would say if each of you can kind of become the person who's paying attention to like a certain type of bill, and you're getting updates on judiciary or health or, whatever it is, that's really, really helpful for us, for you and your community, because if you're paying attention and you have a really good sense of what needs to be, or where the calls to action are, you can, follow it up yourself, reach out to us and say you want to, come up and testify, just sign up, jump on board and either testify virtually or in person is always great. And then have a buddy, a couple buddy system to help each other track what's going on, because otherwise it can get really overwhelming for all of us. And so don't feel like you have to have an overview of everything. Pick a couple things and just focus on those.
Joe.
Is there
Oh.
by chance a great day if we were to be able to organize a couple of people to come up from the Gallatin County Democrats that would be especially useful or powerful to you in any of your committees or as a whole?
I think if you guys had a specific, like if you were like looking at the landscape and there was a specific set of bills or type of bill, or let's say two types that you wanted to make sure we were tracking, you wanted to get more information on, you wanted to make your voices heard about, I would say a really, really general one, maybe not, but if you had like local control, there's a lot of attacks on local control, or something like that. If there were a couple things you were really cared a lot about and kind of had as a priority as a group, then we can set up either having you testify in some hearings or just come up and talk with, the legislative, like our group is, we're 14 people, right? I mean, we're a big caucus. And so coming up and sharing your experience and asking questions, or meeting with some of our allies, right? And just saying, you know, as Gallatin County, these are the things that we're watching, and we want you to know that we're watching. Right, and that we care. So yeah, but I would just say pick a topic or two, so that it can be focused, because there's so much going on.
And Rio, just to answer your question about the property tax credit for renters, House Bill 154 is currently in committee in the Taxation Committee. It has not had a hearing date yet. It did clear the House, sponsored by Jonathan Carlin and requested by our own Pat Flowers.
Oh, good. That's in there. That's great. That's a great bill.
Yeah, and I'll keep
Thank
tabs
you.
on it. When it gets a hearing date, it'll end up in my newsletter.
Okay, great.
And I will be up in Helena Friday, so be ready.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Oh, can't hear you, Rio.
Sorry. I just wanted, yeah, thank you, everyone. Cora, this was great. Yeah, stay tuned. We'll have another one coming up next week. Joe, do you know who it is next week?
That will be Becky Edwards.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great week.